Death and Disco podcast. My name is Emily Bingham. I am a spiritual life coach, a widow, a healer, a mystic, a mom, and I am here to host a series of conversations around how we can make the most out of life by embracing what we fear most, your inevitable death. And I say that kind of funny and scary because whether you're consciously aware of this or not, we have been conditioned to fear this topic so much. And I believe that our denial of death, both at an individual and a collective level, is literally destroying us. Now, I'm going to get into the why I believe this and why I also believe why embracing death is the key to unlocking a key of soul alignment, of inner abundance, and radical aliveness in just a moment. But I want to give you just a little bit of context about where I've been and how I have come into wanting to have this conversation in the first place. Because whether you've been following me from the beginning or you're just, coming along now, I think our stories and the experiences that we've been through in life really show us what we're meant to do here in this lifetime. And so death has been my greatest teacher. And I didn't realize this right away. It's been kind of an inquiry that I've been in for about 7 years now. And it began with the death of my 32-year-old husband, Ian, to cancer in March of 2019. Now, at the time, I definitely was not thinking that death could be my greatest teacher. I was like, fuck this. This is the worst thing that could ever be happening to me. Why me? Why him? Why us? It didn't make any sense for a perfectly healthy 32-year-old man who, had a 2-year-old and then one on the way to be diagnosed with terminal cancer. It was the worst thing ever that I could imagine in my life. But since his passing 7 years ago, I have healed so many wounds. I have shed different identities and versions of myself. I have become a whole new person who's seen life through an entirely new lens. And what's so ironic is that in reflecting on the experience, I can see that Ian's death and my experience of loss gave me an advantage that most people my age don't have. I am turning 40 this summer, and I can tell you there are not many 40-year-olds having conversations around their mortality and the meaning of life. I think often that's happening in your 60s and 70s. Like I have that conversation with my dad. And sometimes we don't even have it then, right? Because we're just so afraid to talk about what's real, right? The thought of us no longer existing is too much for our fragile ego to handle. But what I have found is that by, in my experience of losing my husband, Ian, and how that really opened me into a whole new inquiry about what life is about and what really matters. And then beyond that, really just contemplating my own mortality and what I want to do with my tiny little blip of a second of time that I'm here on earth. And what does this all mean anyways? I feel like I've just unlocked this treasure chest of information and insights and ways of seeing the world and being in the world that I want to share with everyone here. And that's truly what the heart of this podcast is all about. Because I believe that you don't need a loss to learn how to live. My desire is to unlock the medicine that my experience of losing my late husband, Ian, and of just the archetypal energy of death and the insights I've gleaned from contemplating my own mortality and sharing these tools and these practices with you so that you can incorporate them into your life to unlock a life of deeper meaning and magic for you as well. So let's dive into a little bit about what this season is going to be about. If you've been following me too, you might have noticed that I have a new name for the podcast. Last year, the name was It's Just Me, Emily, and I launched it in January of 2025. It was very much in alignment with the journey that I had been on since pivoting my business from Move Through Grief into just Emily Bingham life coaching, spiritual life coaching. One thing that we're going to be talking about on this show is the metaphorical deaths that we have to go through in life. The deaths that choose us, like my husband's death, or you could say a breakup, or the ones that we choose, right? So in my business pivot, from being a grief coach and like Emily the widow and really growing this whole identity and community around that, I had to choose to cross this threshold to let go of those identities and that business and that community that I had built, to go back to enter into the void, into the unknown. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what would be on the other side, but what I knew is that the old way wasn't serving. I felt stagnant. My life force felt stagnant. I felt uninspired about the things that I was talking about. I wanted to expand more. And so you'll hear later in this episode that like dying really is a practice, knowing when to let go, knowing when to release so that we can become more of who we're meant to be in this lifetime. So last year, It's Just Me, Emily was really about the journey that I had been on, the deep work around discovering my soul's purpose, the deeper I beneath the roles and the masks that we wear, and really figuring out who I was at my essence. And that work has been so key in figuring out like really what I'm here for, because there's been many times over this past year where I've launched new offers, workshops where like no one has signed up, social media posts that have just been met with crickets, right? Where I've really questioned, is this the path for me? But because I did the work that I highlighted in the whole first season of It's Just Me, Emily, I kept reminding myself, yes, Emily, this is your path. This is what you're here for. This is the way. This is what you want to do with your limited time here on earth. I just didn't know like what was the message quite yet. And so if you haven't listened to that episode, I really invite you to go back and listen to it. There's so many amazing conversations with different healers, with astrologers, with people who are in my local community who I believe are just really embodying their purpose. And the way that I define purpose is it's not so much about what you do, it's really about who you are and moving from that place, from complete alignment. So check out that episode if you haven't already. If you're feeling like you're lost or in a transition, you don't know who you are or what you want to do with your life, like there's so much potent material for you to help navigate your way along that path. I also really dove into my wounds around unworthiness and healing that, and realizing that, even at the pinnacle of my success with my last business Move Through, where I had launched book deals, clothing lines, I had been on Good Morning America, on local news, right? Like I was receiving all this acclaim and accolades. I just felt so empty inside because it was serving this hungry ghost of self-worth, unworthiness within me. And so again, like I've just been on this journey of really loving myself, knowing that I am already enough, of really allowing my ego to dissolve so that I can come even deeper soul alignment with myself and really lead from a place of love, not lack. Like I know I am enough. And now it's literally just like, what do I want to do? And who am I here to serve? So after going through that journey, I've really decided, and I have an episode on last season that I recommend you go watch. The episode titled Why Death Helps Us Make the Most Out of Life. And that episode is going to go into my epiphany moment around why death? Like, why is it that I'm here for death medicine? And it's funny because when I had that epiphany, that was in January of 2025. And I literally got the download, or like I got the intuitive hit that the movement that I was meant to launch was called YOLO, the YOLO Year. And that's a program that I have been developing now for over a year now, because it's taken that long for me to really deepen into what does this actually mean and who is this actually for? And I'm so glad that I've launched it a couple of times. I've had a couple people enroll, but like Again, I could have said, this isn't it. It's not working, right? Like something's wrong with me. And believe me, I had those thoughts, but I did the work to truly know myself. I said, no, I believe that this is it. And I just want to let you guys know that like it's finally clicked. And I just feel like the pathways are open and now it's just a matter of bringing it all to life. So yeah, you can go back and listen to that whole episode, but I want to just give you like a little bit of a cliff notes in case you don't want to listen to the whole thing. But I was doing a lot of priestessing work at the time, in not facilitating it, but receiving that work. And I was in ceremonies. And through a series of different ceremonies, I just got the hit. And it's funny because it's like download as if it comes from something outside of ourselves, but it's actually us, right? Like God, I believe, is us, life force, consciousness. It's all a part of us. And we're also a part of one. We're a part of it all. Like, oh, it's so fucking cool. But I got this intuitive hit basically where I heard this voice so clearly and it just said, Emily, show people the beauty of life. And as I got that message, I was like, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because the days before, I had literally just seen a ton of death imagery, skulls, black candles, snakes, serpents, which are a symbol of death and rebirth and the shedding process, right? So as I connected those puzzle pieces together, and also just like connected the different dots and experiences of my life, that's kind of how I came up with like, show people the beauty of life by helping them embrace death. And this whole year, I've really just been dosing myself with my own medicine to like really embody it and understand what that means for me. Okay, so this is my official welcome to Death and Disco. This is where I just gave you a little bit of where we've been, and now I want to talk about where we're going. And so this is going to be a podcast that teaches you how you can embrace death to live a more aligned, abundant, and radically alive life. These are all frameworks and teachings and that I teach in my signature program, the YOLO Year. But we're also going to be bringing in amazing experts, researchers, philosophers, everyday people who've experienced near-death experiences or loss, or are also trying to like shed light on the death space. People on Instagram that I've met who just see their lives through the lens of loss. So follow along. It's going to be great. But I want to tell you a little bit about this name, like Death and Disco, right? Like it's like, what the fuck? Like death and then like disco party. And this is a really intentional duality that I wanted to share with you because death, like I said, it can be such a morbid and scary topics for so many of us. We want to avoid it. We want to fear it. But what I found is that by bringing death out of the shadows and into the light, we don't experience fear. We experience freedom, right? It's like with any type of shadow work. When it's in the shadow, it's actually holding you hostage, but in a subconscious way. You're not actually free. So that's why shadow work is so important, is when we look at these patterns, these beliefs, and these behaviors about ourselves that seem so awful and disgusting that we suppress them, right? But in the suppression, they actually take more control over our life. We have to look at them, analyze them, heal them, love them into wholeness in order for us to integrate them into healness and to liberate ourselves from them, essentially. And the same is true for death. So I'm trying to kind of like make this topic fun. It's a disco party, right? It's free. It's liberating. And like when you really, really sit with the fact that we're going to die, like the average human being is here for 77 years. Okay. And you think about how long the earth has been around, which is what, like 3.54 billion years. That is like a tiny little speck. It's like a little glitter spark. Okay. So it's like all of our problems seem so big when we're here, but when you really like zoom out and look at the entire amount of time that like human civilization has been around and then Earth, it's like, oh my God, I am so insignificant. Like this is fucking funny. This is hilarious. Like that I actually feel like I'm really this stressed out about like my kids' fucking CMAS. That's my daughter's doing the CMAS right now, the standardized testing right now. Like, no, come on. So that's kind of a little bit about death and disco. And then interestingly enough, I just completed my temple guide certification through the 13 Moon Mystery School. It's a priestess training program around the sacred feminine. It's a mystery school. It's really fun. But on their wheel of the year, which is basically a circular calendar year, but it has 13 months instead of 12 because we can get 13 is actually a feminine number, but the patriarchy like erased it and made it like an unlucky number. So 13-month calendar year. Each of the months corresponds with a different archetype. And so the Queen of Death is one of the archetypes. They have like the mother archetype, they have the Lady of Communion, they have the priestess archetype, lots of different archetypes. But the Queen of Death archetype sits opposite of the Muse. Queen of Death is in December, winter, which stands for like, death, dying inward symbolically. And if you think of like medicine wheels, this is the same kind of indigenous ancient wisdom traditions, right? So Queen of Death is on one end, and then the Muse is in June and on the other side. And so it's interesting because that there's like a pairing there. There's a polarity pairing there. And the Queen of Death is all about, her medicine is about releasing and being in the void and letting go and embracing endings, right? Whereas the Muse is all about creativity and spontaneity and joy and like innocence and her ability to like see things through different angles. And so what I have found is that I hold a lot of that duality within myself. Death and Disco holds that. And just again, like in my own embodiment of this medicine, like I have found how death opens us up to new perspectives. When I lost Ian, it was like mind blown. Like I had never watched someone literally take their last breath and die. And it opened me up into a whole new world of the afterlife, of spirituality, of tending to my inner world and my emotions, of really questioning like what life is actually about. And so you can see how these two archetypes are related. And so that's why Death and Disco was born. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit more into what this season is going to be about and like the core medicine that I want to deliver to you through these conversations. So, first of all, I believe that mortality is a mirror. When you truly sit with the fact that we are going to die, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And you really start to like think about, well, what is the point of this experience? You can like almost visualize your life right now. And this is an exercise I do with my clients. And I'll link it in the notes. It's called the wake up call. But you can look at your life and see just like the way that you're moving and how you're spending your time, the conversations that you're having, the frequency that you're holding. And, often when we look at our life through the lens of our deathbed, it's like, really? Like, what am I doing with my time? My time here is limited, and I'm here stressing out about like super small things. I'm addicted to my screen. I'm on my cell phone all the time. I'm yelling at my kids. Like, is this really the legacy that I want to leave behind? And even legacy is a man-made construct, right? Like, what does that even mean? Some of us have been fed the illusion that a legacy is like this big impact, like spotlight, speeches, life-changing technology, saving the world type energy, when like your legacy might be actually something much more softer and subtle, like staying home with your kid because that's just what you love to do, or volunteering at a senior center, right? It's not flashy and big. So mortality is really about contemplating your mortality and really sitting with what is the point of life and what does this mean to me? What do I want to do with my time here? Is a clarifier. It cuts through the societal shoulds. It cuts through the conditioning. It cuts through even the ego desires of like needing to feel enough or important or like we matter, right? Like it's really just, the more that I've sat with it, it's just like, we're here for a blink of an eye and all of it matters and it also doesn't, but it's going to be different for all of us. And so that's why I believe that mortality can be a really powerful tool in honing in on what matters to you. Mortality is also a magnifier of miracles. When you think about the fact that you are going to die one day, and that, and sometimes it's easier to almost think about it through the lens of other people's deaths. This absolutely losing my husband Ian and seeing him get cancer and seeing his body slowly dissolve essentially into this shell of a human being, where he used to be this like strong, bulky guy tossing around our kids in the pool, to like him barely being able to get out of bed. It just, as awful as it was to witness that, it also opened my eyes and perspective to, wow, like what a miracle it is to just simply be here. What a privilege it is to just move my body. What a gift it is to have my heart beat and to feel my pulse, and to just be here to feel the sun and the breeze, and to like, I'm going to cry, like be able to feel like my daughter and my son's embrace. Like there's so much magic right in front of us that we miss because we're constantly we're not looking for like, what can I lose? We're actually asking like, I want more, right? We've grown up in a culture that has conditioned us that we need more in order to feel happy, to feel safe, to feel worthy, to feel enough, to feel free. And when you embrace your own mortality, when you realize that tomorrow is not guaranteed, that maybe one day you wake up with a call that you have cancer and that you're not going to be able to move your body or do the things that you used to do, it's like the most mundane becomes magical, and it does become such a miracle to see your life through that lens. And this is a practice that I've had to really develop for myself over the year, because we're that conditioning around chasing, proving, performing, hustling to believe that that's going to be the thing that makes us feel a certain way. It is ingrained so deep within us. I had to do a lot of healing work around that, and then constantly see my life through the lens of gratitude and, wow, today is a gift, as a practice to create a new pattern for myself. But there's actually a psychological concept that just explains this. It's called the subtraction effect. And it explains why this is so powerful, because they've studied this. It's that when you take something away, you actually feel more grateful for it. So I just invite you, even as we're listening to this, like imagine not being able to hike a mountain because your lungs don't let you breathe, or maybe that's a little extreme, but even like get out of bed to hang out with your kids because you have like tubes tied to you. My brother is dealing with Meniere's disease, which is where he gets severe vertigo, and he hasn't been able to work. He's barely able to like tend to his, newborn daughter. So just remembering, it's again, like these are all like dark. It feels like dark. I don't want to think about these sad, bad things, but like in doing so, we allow our heart to open. We can be more empathetic towards others' suffering, and not to feel it. Sometimes we see like, oh, we have it so much. I have it so much better than they do. They're so worse off, and that can ignite almost like guilt, like a survivor's guilt. But the invitation is to feel it and then be grateful. Be grateful that you don't have to, that you're not in that situation. And maybe you will be motivated into support someone in some way. But mortality is an amplifier. It's a magnifier of miracles, of tiny little miracles that typically we wouldn't see if we didn't have that experience of loss, of death, of really sitting with our own mortality. Mortality is also motivation. I do this exercise with my clients as well, and in workshops. It's like, take a piece of paper, draw a line on it, and on one end put your birthday, and then on the other end put when you think you're going to die, knowing that the average person dies at the age of 77. And you can kind of think about this based off of your family health history. How well do you take care of your body right now? Like, kind of come up with a number intuitively, right? Like, I think I'm going to probably die like in my late 90s. I take pretty good care of myself. So then put the age that you are on that line. So if I die at 90 and I'm turning 40, I'm almost halfway there, right? And you look at that chunk of time that you have left, and it's like, That's a finite amount of time. Time is literally the only asset that we don't get back. Yet we chase money, right? But with something you buy and you don't like, you can return it. With time, you don't get that shit back. So it's like really looking at this amount of time that you have and asking yourself, what do I want to do? And then the next step is remembering that you don't have control over that dot on the other side of the end of that line. You don't know when that's going to be. That is just like a number that you came up with, that you pulled out of your ass, right? Maybe not your ass. Maybe it was more intuitive than that. But hey, it's a disco party here. We're going to go with it. But like my husband, shit, I thought that we were going to grow old together. And no, he dies when he's 32. So play with that dot, bring it back. Well, what happens if, 10 years before the age I think I'm going to die, I get Alzheimer's? Well, that's going to compromise quality of life. Oh, what if I have a heart attack in my 60s, right? Like that changes. And so the reason I say this is not to freak you the fuck out. It's to recognize that, like, again, every day is a gift, and that this is like, don't wait. Don't wait to begin your life. Don't delay on your dreams any longer. Like, live the life that you want to live right now, because you don't know when it's going to be your time. Case in point with Ian, my God, like him getting this cancer diagnosis when he was 23, and then we find out that it's terminal when he's 30, it drastically changed our priorities. We thought we had forever. Here we are living the American dream. We have the white picket fence life, kids on, like 2 kids. He's climbing the corporate ladder, doing all the things. I'm launching I was launching my fitness company at the time. I was on the entrepreneurial track then as well. But you just don't know. And so he gets this cancer diagnosis, and immediately it snaps things into perspective. He quits his job. Like, suddenly the dreams of climbing the corporate ladder really don't matter that much anymore. I end up quitting mine too. We move out to Colorado because we needed help. And then we decided to go take a bucket list trip to Spain and Italy together because we just didn't know. We didn't know how much time he had. And you might say, oh, well, that's because Ian had cancer and that's why you guys did that. But the truth is, none of us know. After working with widows, primarily widows and other grievers for the past 4 years, I have heard horrific stories of people who are there one day and gone the next. And again, this isn't to be morbid. It's to motivate you into action right now. Stop delaying on your life. The only certainty is right now. So it's time, make it count. And I know that can be hard to do because we have bills to pay. We have real life, we have to pay rent. We have to cover medical expenses, all of the things. And a lot of times we get into the mindset of, well, I'd love to live this YOLO lifestyle, this bucket list life, but I've got to work, right? And yes, that's true. And I'm not saying abandon all of your responsibilities, but the invitation is to hold both. The knowledge that, yes, we have real world things that we have to do, and we don't know if tomorrow is a guarantee. We don't know if next year is a guarantee. So can you at least hold that tension and make a little of time to start that art project that you've been wanting to do, to go roller skating because you think it's fun. I started roller skating this year instead of just working all the time, to make your relationships a priority, or to really get clear on what matters and to start integrating some of it into your life instead of waiting for someday, because that someday might not ever come. So we've talked a little bit about embracing your mortality and physical death, right? But there's also this whole other body of, I like to call it death medicine, around metaphorical deaths. And what I mean by metaphorical deaths are not the physical ones, but the ones that still require a full death and rebirth. So this could happen when you're pivoting jobs, when you get fired from a job, when you go through a really hard breakup with someone who you love, when your kids leave home, when you reach retirement. It's basically when one chapter of your life ends and you're not quite sure where this other one begins. And we, just like we avoid physical death, we sure as hell avoid the metaphorical deaths too, because we're biologically wired to stay safe. And at a nervous system level, we equate safety with certainty, with predictability. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like endings. They're really hard because when something ends, we're forced to let go. We're forced to let go of that role, of the responsibilities of who we were, maybe in that relationship or in that job or in that chapter of our lives. And it requires us to like really shed those identities and behaviors and beliefs and patterns and step into this unknown territory so that we can discover like the next evolution of ourselves. And I believe that the void is potent ground for self-discovery. Often we hide behind these masks and these roles and these identities. And typically when you go through a death rebirth process, it is this metaphorical shedding and really and the process that I've been through and the process that I walk my clients through is like, it's a homecoming to a deeper level of your truth. Because as we go on the path of healing and growth, it's really about like individuation and discovering who we are beneath the masks and the roles and the identities and that we've stepped into consciously or unconsciously throughout our lives. It's kind of like this recalibration period of who am I now and what feels aligned for me now and what do I want? And I kind of touched on that briefly at the beginning of this podcast around like my business pivot, right? It's hard. It's messy. It's really uncomfortable. We like to have direction and clarity. It's like guardrails, right? And when you're in the void, it's like the guardrails are off. It's a blank canvas. And you can really see that as an opportunity of infinite possibility. But a lot of us feel paralyzed by that and we get confused and we shut down. So this part of death medicine is recognizing that dying is actually a practice that is necessary for us to continue to grow and to evolve, and that there's a way of being in the void, kind of this like surrendered state and really going inward instead of trying to grasp for the answers and trying to like just get on with life. And because that we actually miss the medicine of that period. We miss the opportunity to come home to ourselves and then to be reborn into something new. And it's kind of this weird duality because when I say born into something new, I really do see this more as a shedding process. It's more of like emerging from beneath the skin that we were wearing that might have felt confining or didn't quite fit us in the first place. Because if you think about it, like when you're born, you don't have any of these constructs layered on you. You don't have conditioning. You don't have beliefs. You're just like this little blob, this little baby, just like making its way through life. And it's like that nature versus nurture, right? So I believe that this process is really about coming back to your nature and to who you've always been. If you think about who you were as a kid, like I was always dancing around the living room to like Andrew Lloyd Webber, Phantom of the Opera. I always wanted to be on stage. And, you know, in this last iteration of self-discovery, like I remembered that and I was like, I want to speak on stages. Like that's always been who I've always been, that girl. And it just makes sense that that's like where I'm at now in my journey. And it'll continue to change, right? We're going to continue to shed and grow and evolve. But these metaphorical deaths are important and they're a part of this medicine and something that I want to talk about here. I really believe that embracing death is what can help us heal the world, is as each individual embraces the fact that we are mortal, we're going to die, and really starts to contemplate like, what is this experience actually about? I think that can have a ripple effect of change throughout the world, because what we're seeing right now is that we are really divided. I mean, 2025 and 2026 have been crazy so far. We're seeing politically, religiously, gender, race, like so much othering and so much division. And there's this concept called terror management theory that kind of explains why we're seeing this. And, you know, with any scientific theory, there's naysayers and there's holes in it, right? But I've read about terror management theory. I have one of the main researchers coming on the podcast to talk with us. I read their book, The Worm at the Core, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So I just invite you to listen with like curiosity and openness and see if this lands for you. So Terror management theory is a social psychological framework, and I have my notes here because it's a lot, developed in the 1980s by Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Pazinski. They basically developed all of this research off of the cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker's work called The Denial of Death, which he won a Pulitzer Prize for in 1973. Okay, now the way that they explain, I mean, this is Becker essentially, and then they build off of his hypothesis by actually creating scientific evidence of this. So Becker is who came up with this part, but he's saying that basically humans are wired for survival, and humans, unlike any animals, like we have consciousness, and so we're unlike Miley, who is sleeping on my couch right here, snoring super loud. Like, she's not aware of her death. She might be she has survival instincts, right, to keep her out of trouble, but she's not consciously aware of the fact that she will die. Or at least, I don't think they've proven that. So his argument is that humans do have that we are aware. We're aware of our existence. And with that, we're kind of have this like fundamental tension because biologically we're programmed to survive, yet we know we're going to die. And because of this tension, then we have what he dubs death anxiety. It's like knowing that like our innate biological need is to live, yet we know we're going to die. So whether this is conscious or unconscious, we have this like dread of dying. And the way that we have buffered our anxiety around dying over the years is by creating what he calls immortality projects. So immortality projects are ways of symbolically transcending death. And he has two terms for that. One is literal immortality, which can be through an afterlife belief, like religion, right? Passing on, or symbolic immortality, which is like creating art, buildings, companies, legacies, raising children, writing books, creating something bigger than yourself that will live on in perpetuity, right? So these are all ways that we try to buffer our fear around death. And so these immortality projects then have created cultural worldviews. And you can see this, right? Cultural worldviews are shared systems of meaning that give life order, permanence, and significance beyond our individual biology, religion, nationalism, political ideas, legacy, institutions, even scientific progress narratives. These all function as frameworks that say the world makes sense and your place in it matters. That's really key. The world makes sense and your place in it matters because humans are meaning-making machines, right? And so if you really sit with like, I'm here for just like a little glitter dust sparkle in terms of like the whole amount of human existence, it's really hard to like feel like, what the fuck? Like, why am I even here? And believe me, I've been there. Like, I have been contemplating this for the past year, and I went into a bit of an existential wormhole around it. And it's funny because I introduced this concept to one of Izzy's dads at school. We were on a field trip together, like riffing about death. And I'm like, yeah, like if you really think about it, like it all matters and it doesn't matter at the same time. And he's like, yeah, but like, then how do you have any purpose? And I was like, I know, that's the whole thing, is that the constructs of purpose that we have been served are man-made. They're all made up by a bunch of people trying to make sense of what the fuck this whole existence is about. And that's what Ernest Becker is talking about. It's all buffering against our anxiety of death. We've created these cultural worldviews around what matters in life, whether it's legacy, religion, making your impact, right? Like all of these different ways that we've given meaning. And then the second piece of this is self-esteem, knowing that you matter as an individual and that you belong to one of these cultural worldviews. So we need to feel that we're a valuable participant in our cultural worldview. So it's not just feeling good about yourself in a shallow sense. In terror management theory, self-esteem is the internal signal that you're living up to the standards of whatever meaning system you belong to. Okay? So those are the two key components. Self-esteem. I matter and I'm doing a good job according to the cultural worldview that I have subscribed to. So can you see how this can get really dangerous and divisive? So if you're a Christian and you're following all of the rules of religion in order to give you a sense of self-worth and meaning and that you matter, that are subconsciously also buffering you against your existential threat of death. If you're living and doing your life, then you have someone who's Muslim and doing it their way, it's going to create some division, because subconsciously what happens when you see someone else living their life in a way that, according to their worldview, in a way that makes them feel like they matter because that's how they've made sense of the world, it's a threat to their mortality. And so what the TMT, Terror Management Theory research does is it actually tests people's response to death. Like they have all of these studies where people have been reminded of death and they show that they're more divisive, that they're not as kind to one another, that they're actually more greedy, right? Because another way of buffering our death anxiety is through how much material wealth we have, how big our house is, how much money we can pass on to our kids. And, that's a cultural worldview that a lot of us in the Western society have absolutely subscribed to. That the more I do, the more I earn, the more I produce, the more I matter, right? And that's how we've made sense of our place in the world. And we're seeing this in real time with, just how the divide in our politics and how we've really just othered one another. And I guess the reason why I feel like if we embrace death, it can literally save the world is because if we just took a step back and realized that a lot of the meaning that we have created in our life is literally just a construct and not truth. Like we get all of these, I guess what I want to say is that these constructs aren't bad. We need them in order to live here, because otherwise we're going to you literally are in a cycle of existential dread. But where we've gone wrong is that we've attached our identities. We've confused these constructs as truth, and there is no truth. There's only your individual truth, and we need to be able to hold everyone else's truth at the same time in order for everyone to get along. Okay, so we're going to go into that topic more with Sheldon Solomon. He's on the show in the next episode, so stay tuned if that was interesting to you. I think for me, it's a little bit academic and hard to communicate effectively. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. But just to support my hypothesis around how I believe embracing death can save the world a little bit more, is that there's also now research on death awareness and instead of death anxiety, how by accepting your death acceptance can actually make you more open-minded, can make you more generous, can dissolve the ego and make you feel more connected to other human beings, which is the medicine. That's the balm that the world needs right now. And my first example here is of people who've experienced near-death experiences. Often, I read this book called Dying to Be Me by Anita Morangi, and she talks about how in her near-death experience, she literally could feel her spirit rising above her body, and she just felt at one with the universe, connected across all time and space. She could look down and see the people that she loved, and she just felt a part of something greater. And she ended up coming back, and she's been sharing her story with millions of people. But people, when they have this touch of death, they somehow feel boundless. They're a part of something vast. All of these, there's no separation between the universe and us. We're all one. And I've had my own experience around that too, just in losing Ian and in my own spiritual inquiry. It's we're a part of the earth. I don't know how, I guess there's different ideologies and religions that believe that man are somehow separate, but I believe that we all came from the same thing. We're all stardust, right? And so I think if you can really start to see yourself, dissolve that ego, quiet the ego, and recognize that we're a part of the earth, and therefore we're a part of one another. And why would I want to hurt another part of myself? Essentially. I think and these are all concepts that might sound really cerebral and out there, but as you can, people who've experienced near-death experiences have had them. Another way that they're studying this is through altered states. I have an episode on last on my last season that dives into altered state therapy, but they're talking about like ayahuasca and DMT and psilocybin and how these can induce an NDE-like state. And they share how after experiencing an altered state journey, people have shown lower death anxiety, less avoidance, openness to the transient nature of existence. And it's like kind of this idea that when you stop fighting the fact that we're going to die, that everything here on earth dies and is reborn. Like it's this beautiful life, like cycle, right? Something in you relaxes at a very deep level. It's like it all matters and it doesn't. And it's like, I'm a part of something greater, right? So there's been all of this research now just sharing that the more we face death, the more fully we can live and the more that we can all get along. And, you know, there's unfortunately, psychohistorian Robert J. Lifton has actually proposed that humans may be the first species directly responsible for our own extinction. And it's because they cite it because of this death anxiety. We're the only ones aware of our existence and thus aware of our death. And because of this, we literally end up killing each other because of this fear. So the more that we can embrace the fact that we're going to die, recognize that we're all a part of this greater cosmic dance, the more open we can be, the more empathetic we can be, the more like understanding we can be that like everyone here has a role, just like the trees, just like the bees, just like the butterflies, just like the soil and the, you know, like it's all a part of it and everyone belongs, even though we might look different on the surface. All right, you guys. So that turned into a super long episode, but I am just really excited to dive deeper into these topics with you. I really just am so passionate about death like being the thing. I think death and life are so inextricably intertwined, and I believe that death is the key to unlocking a life of deep meaning and magic and radical aliveness. And I don't think you need a loss to learn how to live. So I hope that you will join me for this season to dive into this topic with me, to share your reflections, your insights in the comments. So if this resonated with you, please share the episode with friends. Please comment, please follow, please be here. And again, just welcome to a new season of the Death and Disco podcast.